لله نحمده ونصلي على رسول الكريم. In our previous two lectures we dealt with sentimentalism or romanticism and its different types like religious romanticism and romantic nationalism. Today we will discuss something about wisdom. And wisdom is a quality which is totally opposite to romanticism. I would like to begin with a verse from Quran where God Almighty says, قَدْ جَعَكُمْ مِنَ اللَّهِ نُورٌ وَكِتَابٌ مُبِينٌ. A light has come to you from God and a clear book. يهدي به الله من اتبع رضوانه سبل السلام ويخرجهم من الظلمات إلى النور بإذنه ويهديهم إلى صراط مستقيم. And by this book God guides those who follow what pleases Him to the ways of peace, and He will bring them from the darkness to the light by His permission and guide them to straight path. The important difference between a wise person and an intelligent person is often missed. This is a critical error. The word intelligence is generally used in our society to refer to the quality of mere mental acuity and is very different from wisdom. Wisdom is the quality of a believer who has ability to recognize the subtle signs of God in everything that He has created, allowing him to understand the world around him. But any attempt to consider these things that relies only on brain's ability to calculate cause and effect is bound to end in mechanistic and narrow perception of reality. Wisdom is a quality of believer who has firm faith in God and who lives his life in accordance with the teachings found in the verses of Quran. Intelligence is a physical characteristic which is possessed by individuals in varying degrees, but wisdom is a quality that belongs only to believers. Those who do not have faith also are not possessed of the virtue of wisdom. And wisdom allows a believer to properly employ his mental abilities, his judgment and logic, thus making the best use of his virtues. An individual without wisdom, no matter how intelligent he may be, is bound at some point to veer into faulty thinking or into bad judgment. If we examine unbelieving philosophers throughout the course of history, we will recognize that they have put forward different and sometimes even diametrically opposite views on the very same subject. Despite the fact that they were the people of high intelligence, they had no faith, and because they had no faith, they also were not sufficiently wise and were therefore incapable of arriving at the truth. Some of them indeed drew humanity into numberless errors. We can find several such examples in recent history. Many philosophers and ideologues and statesmen such as Karl Marx, Engels, Lenin, Trotsky, despite the fact that they were very intelligent, they caused disaster. Now, what is the source of wisdom? As we said before, that it is the deep-seated faith and fear of God. Those who fear God, heed His commandments and prescriptions, become naturally possessed of this superior insight as a blessing from God. And this superior insight is wisdom. But though this virtue is easily acquired, very few are endowed of wisdom. This condition that God makes known in Quran, saying, most of them do not use their reason, so they are not wise. It arises from the fact that most people do not have the proper faith, having left no room for Quran in their lives. The wisdom that God has granted to those who fear Him and who live their lives in conformity with the Book of Almighty renders the devout believer superior to unbeliever in many ways. The basic components of this wisdom are the believer's knowledge that God controls all things all the time, his consciousness of the fact that everything in its every detail comes into being according to the fate which God has predetermined. The keenness of believers' insight and understanding, their attentiveness and awareness, their superior analytical ability, good morals, strong character, and their wisdom in word and action and all natural products of their wisdom. Now consider if the extraordinary characteristics we describe as belonging to an individual were to belong to a society. Think of the benefits incurred to a society formed of individuals who use their minds in everything they say, in every action they take, in every decision they make, and in every problem they undertake to solve. So what kind of society we will be having? It will be an ideal society. Wisdom is the most important quality a person can have. With it, it brings benefits to others more than anyone else. Because by the morality that faith instills, there is no greater aim for him than to gain the approval of God. Throughout his life, such a person displays the qualities of true believer as described in Quran. He protects the oppressed. He cares for the homeless, the lonely, the needy. He feels responsibility for the fair application of justice and will not tolerate anyone going hungry. His wisdom allows him to apply what he has learned from Quran and to develop a conscientious sense of social responsibility. We all seek such people who use their minds to find solutions to problems, to apply the appropriate measures in giving advice and recommendations, and who show wisdom in what they say and what they write. Now there is a common sentimentality in our societies. As we know, it is sentimentality is one's acting upon not in accordance to the truths acquired by wisdom and reason, but in accordance with one's emotions. And this sentimentality is a spiritual disease which is latent in every member of atheistic and paganistic societies, though it is generally affecting the people differently. Despite its actually being a spiritual disease, sentimentality is nonetheless a very common measure in ignorant societies towards determining whether or not someone is a good person. It has affected the majority, albeit the uninformed majority of society, to such an extent that someone who is not easily moved to the romantic feeling is quickly dismissed as heartless and unfeeling. Can sentimentality be so innocent and harmless as it is thought to be? If we are to look at this question and answer it realistically, we will discover the fact that sentimentality gives rise to some very grave results. However, because the solution to every problem and the way out of every difficulty is presented in Quran, those individuals or societies that use it as their guide have all the advantage that wisdom affords. In other words, they come to live the benefits of wisdom. And I recited the verse at the beginning of today's lecture. A light has come to you from God and a clear book. God guides those who follow what pleases Him to the ways of peace, and He will bring them from darkness to the light by His permission and guide them to straight path. It's these wise people who are guided, and it's the wisdom which Almighty sometimes uses in Quran as no. From the time we were children, we are accustomed to seeing people able to cry at anything, from an act of injustice they might read in a newspaper to the sight of a hungry person on TV. When we see them expressing their sorrow for others, we suppose them to be possessed of a good conscience. Whereas such an emotional reaction, if it does not go beyond the mere shedding of tears and placing of blame, is of no use. What such an emotional reaction does not demonstrate is an active and involved interest in welfare of those who are suffering. This type of person takes pleasure in crying and feeling sorry for someone who is suffering, but does nothing to solve the problem. Subconsciously, they prefer to live in a state of abstracted sentimentality. Interestingly, such people seem also to be drawn to pessimism, to hopelessness, to sorrow, despondency, depression, and all other negative feelings into which Satan has diverted the world by means of sentimentalism. There is still another important aspect to consider in this matter. If one were to suggest to them that instead of shedding tears in front of television sets, they should get up and do something, it would accomplish nothing, they would try to get out of it by making excuses such as, what's there to do? What can I do all by myself? They give such excuses. Emotional people contribute in pessimism by suggesting that a problem is too complex to be solved, and this makes others like them adopt the same hopelessness. Many good moral qualities lose its virtue by being affiliated with sentimentality, to the point of even becoming dangerous. For example, compassion is a moral sentiment encouraged by God in Quran, but it is abused by an emotional person who may feel sorry for an oppressor, commend his deeds, and tolerate his ruthlessness. On the contrary, a wise person cannot possibly see any justification in any attitude or in any behavior or thought associated with sentimentality. That is because, as long as this emotional temperament is nurtured in the soul, its more insidious aspects may emerge, and any any time depending on the circumstances and the environment. Now, it's necessary to point out the difference between being sensitive and empathetic and being emotional. In Quran, God makes it clear that to be sensitive, empathetic and gentle are the qualities best exhibited in a prophet. Sentimentality is exact opposite of moral attitude that is recommended in Quran. Believers are not sentimental, but they are empathetic and humane. In other words, they are sober individuals of superior wisdom who possess very strong moral qualities. So in Quran, God speaks about good moral character of Prophet Ibrahim. Inna Ibrahim lahalimun awahum munib. Abraham was forbearing. He was compassionate and penitent. So, we conclude with these words that God Almighty doesn't want us to dwell into the sentimentalism. He wants us to live by reason, to take heed from the lessons, to take heed from the verses of the Quran. As one of the scholars says, Quran is not a book which is to be studied in the cozy armchair, but it's a book. When it was revealed, it drew every pure soul out of their homes to stand against the corruption, against the evil, and that ended up in what we call as Islamization of the whole Arabia. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله.